Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the message. Um, I hope that the story is not true about what Lonzo Ball agreed to do for Angel Reese. Um, they're not the same, and they don't have to be. But if this is in fact true, and Lonzo Ball agreed to pay the fines for Angel Reese, the issue with this is that it is going to prove Manosphere Hall of Fame correct in terms of some things that he has said about normal men that are not even elites, and they just hand women the things that women want in life with no effort, no work on their part. They just give these things to them. That's problematic. I myself don't like that. Angel Reese chose her own career, and she's made decisions that neither she nor the rest of the sisterhood would forgive black men for making in her personal life. She dumped her boyfriend, and you can say what you want about why she dumped him. I'm very sure that it has to do with the fact that we know her name. She's now famous. We don't know his name. I forgot what reason she actually gave. I already knew what the hell it was because I know hypergamy. And coming from that same Gulf Coast region, I already know you don't have to give those women the benefit of the doubt. You have to doubt their benefit. Now, we are supposed to give people the benefit of the doubt as Muslims and as good people in general. But I know the Southeast well enough to tell you that when you are dealing, especially with women from the deep part, the Gulf Coast part of the Southeast, or even so much as 150 miles inland, you doubt their benefit instead of giving them the benefit of the doubt. Um, they're bad with it. They sick with it. Some have told me, well, I came up in this small town in Mississippi and I was a light skinned man and chicks dug me. And I'm like, you were in a small town. The 80s didn't happen there until the late 90s in Mississippi. I already know about that. Ain't no interstate nowhere near where you went, where you lived, where you grew up. Brothers be like, yeah, man, I was in small town Alabama, and I got green eyes and curly hair, and the chicks were all over me. You were in small town Alabama. How long would it take you to drive from where you lived to an interstate highway? You lived in a place, the directions to which included two things. One, turn off the paved road. Two, go back in time. I also know something about these areas. And while I don't know how to live in a place that isolated, I understand how time really, really, really creeps there. So in 1996, 97, it was still the 80s over in places like that. You let somebody get enough cable and watch enough New Jack City, and that would change. So I want y'all to realize and understand that Manosphere Hall of Fame, when he talks about how even non-elite men just bail chicks out from the consequences of their own decisions, not someone else's. Like Superman always did when Lois Lane was a nosy reporter poking a nose in everybody's business with no backup. Always needing a rescue. That's exactly what the hell happens. And it leads to this notion that there's always going to be a guy there who's not going to ask for anything in return, especially intimately, and he's going to bail you out. And that notion has to be over. All that's done is lead to a situation in which men can never get enough, and women can't get enough of each other. That's what we're looking at right now. You think this is normal? It's not. If it was, they would put a stop to it. I want you all to lose and get rid of these notions that you have that that you can bail these chicks out and get their approval. And one of the reasons that we're seeing more men of athletic prowess bail out the undeserving, the least deserving, and even commit to the most reckless thoughts out there is because they don't have any more options than we do. What I've been getting at is that you're going to have to withdraw everything from women that are not giving everything to you. And that includes their bodies. And I'm not telling you to fornicate either. I'm telling you, when you dig them out, it should be with a marriage contract, at least until concubinage comes back. And I'm not sure if it even can. But that's what I'm pretty much saying to you. However, that has to also be done submissively. What I mean is, no is not a valid answer without a valid excuse. And a headache is not a valid excuse. Otherwise, they'll always have them. And in order for that to be the case, you're going to have the option to marry 2, 3, or 4. But you're going to have to withdraw things until the environment is the way you want it to be, an environment that is actually fair or to your advantage, preferably fair. The legal and social environments alike need to be this before you sit up here and you start offering anything to them. They got their own WNBA. It is theirs. If people don't watch it as much, it's a free market. They don't have to. You're not allowed to complain because you can't take pictures of your feet and put them up on OnlyFans and have a bunch of chicks paying a lot of money for these things. You're not allowed to complain about that. Okay, fine. Because that's how the chicks feel. That's they'll sit up and say that's their nature. So what? Okay, now guess what else? They're not allowed to complain because a bunch of men don't want to sit around and watch them playing basketball. I don't watch the NBA. So I'm not capable of feeling any guilt about not watching the WNBA, but you see where this is going and you see how it's going to turn out. You see what I'm discussing right now, what I'm talking about, and to where this will lead. I'm not capable of feeling something is wrong or like I did something wrong or said something wrong in a case like this. In the end, it comes down to the fact that they're not required to like anything about us. And they don't even like when I sit up and say to them, well, at least be honest about what it is that you do like. At least tell the truth. Let's sit up and say we're not even required to be honest about what we like. Okay, fair enough. We're not required to like the WNBA. We're not required to like the WNFL if they ever come out with that. The WNHL if they ever come out with that. We're not required to like any of these things. We're not required to like 4C hair, wide noses, big lips, high melanin counts. Because they're not required to like these things. And whenever they need a bailout, no matter what decisions they've made, that show you that they see you as being not only worth less, but worthless, carrying a negative value, which now Attorney Dennis Sperling has even repeated. There's someone from amongst our ranks ready to bail them out as if they would ever do the same for us. And we already know they would not. And if they did, they would lie about it and hide it because they see us as being that invaluable. They see us as being that low of a value. This is about value judgments that the genders make of each other. It's about that. And here we are showing them that no matter how little we're valued, we will always value them. And then wondering why it is that we can't get the same respect. What did you expect? This is going to send, and it's the same reason. I'm only talking about this for the same reason that I've told you all that I was ever at any point willing to discuss the situation with Russell Wilson and Sierra. What was the reason I was even willing to discuss it at all? It wasn't because I think that they're great people or that they're examples. It's because I know, simply put, I know that we're going to make them and we're going to take them as examples. That's why. We're going to sit up and say, okay, well, you get to be examples for us. So you go ahead and do this, Russell. Not us, but we know that the sister are going to do that. And for years, you're not going to be able to tell them anything else. You're not going to be able to communicate. That's a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons that the table is now firewood. If you want to know one of the things that precipitated that, that's one of those things. The table is now firewood because there was always someone ready and willing to come along and do this rescue. I know, and Russell Wilson was one of them, and he did it no matter what the reasons were, no matter how different it is from the way that we perceive it. And I think BGS was right about that. The fact remains that because he did something like this publicly, we were not able to tell the system what real life was going to be like for them. They just kept pointing and saying, see, Russell Wilson and Sierra, see. And for years, they wouldn't listen to a mother cuss word thing we tell them. And some of you had daughters and cousins and sisters that were like that. Nope, you can't tell me nothing. See, Russell Wilson, see. But they didn't respect him. Even though Russell Wilson did everything else he was supposed to do. When he got cheated on, he didn't simp, he didn't forgive, he left her butt. Now she back on them streets. From the streets, well, for the street she was, and to the street she had to return. Because she cheated. He did the right thing. And yet and still, he can't actually get respect from sisters because if he did, they wouldn't have set up and said, see, he did it for her. They would have actually set up and said, wait a minute, why did he do that for her? That's what would have happened. And that wasn't the way they reacted. So now we got the same thing going on right here, right in front of us. Exact same thing. Hey, guess what? Check this out. If this is true, this NBA player is going to take up her fines, and somebody got the nerve to sit up and say, well, all NBA players should be assigned a WNBA player's fines to pay. Wait, what? What's next? If this actually does become the case, which is between the NBA and the WNBA, if it does happen, what is next? They already feel that every Sierra should have a Russell. The problem is that they're still in control of the kids, the sons that are minors. They're still the ones with the custody of them. And the other thing, the issue that the reason why this even still matters is because although you in my audience are red pill aware, the majority of men in the West aren't. The majority of men in the West, and I care about the black men, the majority of black men in the West, pure or unmixed, if there's such a thing as pure, still think that the right thing to do is have game and cold approach and try to convince these broads to accept a deal in which you get all the responsibility and she gets the privilege and you got to pay everything and she gets to consume. That's what it is. And you're supposed to convince her that this is a good deal for her. You're supposed to go to her first and offer this to her. And then if y'all get anywhere and the relationship goes anywhere, you're supposed to turn around after that and then convince her to marry you to solidify the deal, to close that case. And no matter how much she wants to marry you, she ain't going to propose to you, but you're supposed to propose to her. And this is a problem. This is an issue that you're facing. The majority of men still ain't awakened to this and are not conscious of this. How stupid a deal it is. In a traditional society, I don't think that men necessarily should have to be the ones to make the approaches. In traditional societies. But you know what? In the West, you should be approached. And we already know you ain't going to get approached until she's well post-wall and dried up. Unless, of course, that does not bother you. Now, if that does not bother you, then they'll sit up and spot you and realize it don't bother you and they still won't approach you because you might like that. Ask me how I know. Dual mating strategy ain't over. And this is after Kevin Samuels took to the mainstream a lot of our talking points a lot of men still aren't aware. So what the hell, man? That's what it is that makes this problematic. These men that are athletically uh, excellent to the point that they become pros at it and they're collecting millions, not annually, but quarterly, if not monthly. These men are going and jumping into the arms of old, dried up thoughts. Should they? No, but I'm going to tell you how that can happen. Very simple. In order to get to the levels at which in order to get to the levels to which they must get, they don't have time to learn about women. They got to learn basketball. They got to learn football. And they have to learn the academic subjects if they're going to graduate, at least high school. So they've got to learn all this other stuff. But one of the most important parts of life to most men, they never get to learn about. Oh, don't talk about that. Don't worry about that. Because a lot of guys my generation were told this, and therefore we're telling that to these young guys. I don't worry about that. No, no, no. Worry enough to learn. Don't worry about when you're going to get a lady, but worry about, do you know enough? Because if you don't, they're going to play games and they'll never stop, and all of them will be in on it. And the ones that wouldn't will be so few and far between, you might as well never expect to meet them. And even then, many times, if they're not going to play these games, it would only be because they know that they don't have the looks. And that's not a good reason to not play the games. That's how bad it is out there. And you got these young brothers that are excellent in certain fields, and they're being set up as targets by negligence because no one's telling them. So I already know, since they're not aware, I already know that a lot of young bros that are not elites of any sort are not aware. You and my audience are, and the message is going forward, but it's not going forward fast enough. If someone like Lonzo was sitting up here with his dad, having told him what he's told him, bailing Angel Reese out. And I'm not even saying this with hatred for Angel. I don't really know her, but for what? It's her game. She's an adult. Same thing with Lolo Jones. Some women are going to hear this and they're going to say, well, don't listen to Black Mind because he's just mad because some women have standards and they actually have and they actually do enjoy some status and they're not just a bunch of pick-meshas and he's just mad about that. No, it's not so much about that. It's more so that I'm telling you all about this because it's not just that they have standard, it's because they sit up and they play high post and they play Sadiddy and they do it until they make themselves sad and depressed and deranged, and you don't know what they're going to do to somebody else later on because of it. Lolo Jones cannot act out violently against any man and get away with it. She's more likely to be caught if she did. But what about the masses of women that don't have the publicity that Lolo Jones and Ebony K. Williams have, and who also made a dumb decision? What about the ones that don't have what they have, the publicity, and therefore they actually have anonymity, and they just mad at men because of the decisions they made regarding men when they were younger? What about them? What can they do? They'll do whatever they can get away with. And what can they get away with? It's a gamble. And that's why this matters. I hope that what I've said is a benefit. Please hit the share button. Please hit the share button for this. We know some men that are not red pill aware. And you don't want to be the one to tell them, okay, fine, because they can argue with you because they know who you are. They don't know who I am. So hit the share button, send them this. As always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it, black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day. And thanks for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways. What a phrase, jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.